Okay, welcome to another week of Hello Drunk World. As I crack open a bottle of wine. Ooh, the cap nearly broke there. We're drinking a nice Gatto Merlot. I want to say Merlot, but it's not. My dyslexic mind wants to jump to Merlot, but it's Merlot. So, this week, stream number 12. Surprised I made it this far. And I'm going to be looking into getting some wine sounds first. So we're going to be looking at Recoil JS. It's the kind of latest hotness in like React state management. So I think it was created by, I should know this, I should have done some research ahead of time. But let's see, it doesn't say who's created by, usually they don't ever say. Yeah, so it's created by the Facebook team themselves, which isn't an endorsement by Facebook to say this is what you must use, but I'm sure there was a use case that they had that this is going to fit. So I'm curious to see how it stacks up against all the other different state management libraries. And so last week I looked at, if I can remember, yes, I looked at XState, which I'm not sure what the creators of XState classified as. I classify it as a state management pattern or a state pattern. I wouldn't say it's a state manager because it's more along the lines of using a state machine as a flow to maintain direction of your data and how your data can go through this machine and how you can step back through the machine. But I don't think it's necessarily how you manage your state per se. I think there's more involved in that, and there's more to go around that kind of thing. I imagine this is where Recoil is trying to address some of these issues. I've seen a few people talk about it on Twitter, saying that it's like the savior, it's going to beat out everything else. We'll see how that goes. So, if you're new to the channel, fire a message in the chat. If there's things I'm covering that you don't understand or you're wondering why I'm going certain directions, speak up and let me know. I'm always happy to get feedback on this and kind of see where I can go and how we can polish and make things a little bit better. But let's see. So I guess let's jump right in. And I only have one monitor, so you'll see my streaming software flick up the odd time. Yeah, this isn't professional. I'm not getting paid. So this is, just make sure it's all on the right thing. Yep. So this is Recoil. It's the latest state management library for React, released by the React team. Well, released by Facebook. I'm not sure if it's exactly the React team themselves. So they're kind of selling this as like it's a minimal and React-ish. Recoil works and things like React. Add to some of your app and get the fast flexibility shared state. Okay. Data flow graph. So it seems to be more about how you structure and organize your data. And then cross-app observation. Ooh. Implement persistence, routing, time travel, debugging. Okay, so all the kind of cool things that they've picked out of all the different React management libraries. If you're like me and you've worked on React for a long time, you've probably seen different solutions. The go-to at the minute, which really shouldn't be the go-to, but it is Redux. So Redux was kind of invented by Dan Abramov. Very similar page layout. Invented by Dan Abramov. Now its own kind of fully fledged product team. Still copyrighted by him. It kind of took over the market leadership when it came to state management in React. At the same time, React always had its own set state. There were some different kind of implementations of this. I think there's React Flux was one of the very first that came out. That's funny how they all have the same site layouts. But Flux was it's React's first way of taking state management to another level and allow you to share state across components without having to do all these bad practices of having to pass data down trees. I invested heavily into Alt.js, which was another way. So it's funny, in the beginning, Flux was sold as a site. Flux wasn't really a library. Flux was a way of implementing your state management. So it was, not this two-way data binding that Angular, which was the only really other competing framework at the time, did. It was more of a one-way data flow. So your data would, I'll flick back to so you can see. It's like your data would start at the root of your application, go down into your component, then across into another component or utility file, and then go back up into the actual state. And it was this circular state motion, which at the time, the only other state management idea patterns were handled by Angular, which did a two-way data binding. So I think they've changed from that now, but back then it was the case of you would modify, you have a bit of state, and then that state would map to a DOM node. And if that DOM node changed, it told Angular, I've changed, update your state. So it was talking back and forth, constantly going across. This was great at the time, but if you had a lot of different state in your application, it got really bloated and slow and heavy. And I think the latest versions, what Angular's on, probably version 25 at the minute, they've all addressed, I think, these issues. Not that dealing with big data in the client is never going to be the perfect solution, but I definitely think that's been fixed and addressed. So the Alt was a big one at the time. It kind of died out because there was issues with triggering multiple state updates at the same time, feeding off the same store. You got conflicts, and Redux did solve this problem because it did more of it had this the concept of dispatching actions, and then you would just know the actions were a queue going in and modifying your state bit by bit. At the same time, then you could rewind back to see where a bug happened, where an issue had happened. But then React itself brought in React Context, which kind of changed things up. Context always existed, but it was a private API. So now React has context. There's different solutions to handle context. Some people still just stick with plain old state. I myself have it's a simple stateful provider. Ooh. I have two versions of it, one spelled incorrectly and one spelled correctly. I really need to put up a deprecation notice on the one that's incorrect. Yeah, because it's still, the point is the same. Yeah. So then I created my own, I wouldn't say library, but my own wrapper around React's own context. Ripped off a blog post by Kelsey Dodds to do this, but it allows you to simply interact with statefulness and having providers and passing state down. If you haven't worked deeply with state and React, a lot of this probably doesn't make a lot of sense, or has any doesn't have any context to what your context, but into what you'd be working with in an application. So I built up a kind of small app that we can use for testing out, state in a complex-ish way. I didn't want to go full out for this, but going down lots of components and having to deal with things that some of these libraries are trying to address. So see if the app's running. Wine's kicking in. And if you see me looking down, I'm checking to see if anything's in the chat, but we're all empty right now. I'm sure we'll get something. So I have this crude looking house with different rooms. Each of the rooms have an off and on switch, and that would relate to the light switch for the house. And then we have a list below that kind of keeps an overview of what's going on in the house with a master switch. So I can turn on the light in the master bedroom, comes on here. I turn on the light in the kitchen, comes on here. So everything, that's kind of bad. Everything is on, but there's more on than off. Well, that's not true. Something's on. At least one thing's on, and I can switch them off. or I can switch them all on. So very basic interactions. We have, components, nested levels, that kind of stuff. Let's take a look to see what we're dealing with code-wise. So this is just a Create React app that I've set up previously. So we have house component. Inside here we have a bit of basic state. So we have our initial state, and our state is going to be lights and set lights. So if we look at our initial state, we can see here everything's off by default. So master room, guest room, living room, kitchen room. I'm not sure if living room is a UK thing, or do people in America call it living room? But yeah, here in the UK, like we call it the room that has like your TV and your sofa is the living room. Maybe I'm being stupid, yeah. So then we have a roof component. I just wanted to try and make a roof. Trying to make a CSS triangle was a whole unholy disaster. Hence why this is what I was left with. It kind of looks like the Fowler Ted, Bishop Brennan, and yeah, it kind of looks like that a little bit. The house that I built. Yeah, that's for another day. So we have a roof, does nothing. It just exists. We could probably have like an attic light in here, and that can control like our attic conversion. We have an upper floor, a lower floor component. So it'll make sense why there seems to be like a lot of really redundant components, but this is kind of amplifying the problem that we have here. And then we have our overview components. So like upper floor and lower floor are more or less the same, where we have a floor component that takes children. So that's our master bedroom, our guest bedroom. Every bedroom takes an on and an on light change. It's really annoying. I put an S everywhere. Online changes. Siri triggered. And then in here we have a little bit of style components actions. We can say, yeah, this is a room component that has a light switch. So we can say the name of the room and whether the light's on or off. But you can kind of see, to build something like this in a very arbitrary and extended manner, we have our state in our house component. Then I need to pass it to the floor component. Then I need to pass it to the bedroom component. And then I need to pass that then to our room component, which has a light switch component, and I pass it in here. What if we needed to then set something else? What about if there was a heating property? So and we duplicate this init underscore heat. So now we have on each of these, I'm going to have to say, I need to do multiple cursor, master, we'll say on heat change equals set heat. And then for the here as well, we need to say master heat equals heat dot master. So I'm not going to fill these all out, but so now we have to pass master heat here to say whether the master room's heating's on. We need to go into our upper floor component, and then we need to pass it into here as well. We need to make it a prop. And if we're doing prop types, we would do prop types. You can see this gets very repetitive. Master heat, and then we can say make that a quote. Yeah, I'll probably make it a templated string. Yeah. So we had to do all that just to be able to display whether the master heat was off or on. that's going to get hard and less maintainable over time because we're having to drill down, and it's a known pattern called prop drilling. The guy I mentioned earlier on, Kent C. Dodds, has a great post explaining like what prop drilling is and how to address it and how to manage against it. And because we don't, we would never write a test to verify all the props passive a component, because that is just like, that is how React works, and we're not testing React, we're testing our component, like logic. In a lot of cases, if you move components around or do some refactoring, it's easy to miss out one of those things. And because it's nested down this tree, unless you're checking the heat for the master bedroom, you're going to miss, like if you're only focused on making changes to the kitchen, you're not focusing on this. So you're not going to notice that then disappeared because you didn't pass it in correctly and all that kind of stuff. So it's, how can we then do this? So I think Recoil is potentially a good, solution for this. Any state management library is, but I wanted to try Recoil. So I'm going to dock those over here so I can do both at the same time. So this is our terminal for our application, and we've already done our create React app, so we're going to install Recoil. So let that run. Hopefully the gods of the internet will let it download quick enough. Oh shit, I know why. The create React app is called Recoil, so I can't install Recoil under Recoil. So I do let's try that again. So I just renamed the package.json that I had. Yeah, because you can't install a package on their package, because then you get into a weird inverted loop, I imagine. So we'll let that run. So what are our next steps? So we need to import Recoil at the root of our application. Well, it's suggested to do it at the root using this Recoil root. So it looks to be like we're wrapping it in a provider around the whole product. Kind of smells a little bit like Redux, although what I like is they say to appear somewhere in the tree parent, so it doesn't need to be the root of the tree, whereas at Redux we need to be the root of the tree, and a lot of other state management libraries have to be at the root, because then what you end up is having this one single state. I forgot to mention as well, like another reason why we hate passing things down is I had to pass this on change lights function the whole way down to master bedroom, whereas I would like to just be able to call on change lights and say this is changing the master bedroom to on or off. That was another thing I kind of forgot to mention there. Just keeping an eye on everything. So obviously this is going to be very slow, but it gives us a chance to read ahead in the docs. So we need to import a lot of stuff here. Funny enough, they're only using the Recoil root. So then Recoil has these concepts built in. So the first one is an atom. That'll do. They represent what a piece of state would be. So I liken them to the same way that we have in our house. We have a use state, and that's control all the lights. Now, we could have had individual bits of state for each part of our lights component. It didn't all have to be the one. And I'm curious to see how we're going to do that with Recoil, but it's very similar to that. So it seems to be for every atom, you give it a unique key and a default value. Kind of good in our case, it's always going to be false. Having default values is very useful because you want to know what the empty state of something is. Whether it's a loading flag is always going to be false at the start or true at the start. Then components that need to read from and write the atom should use recoil state. So it's providing us hooks out of the box, which is useful. So we can see text and set text comes from use recoil state and then text state. So text state is this. So I'm curious. It's funny if this came out of like there was a lunch and learn work, and the guy was talking about recoil, and one of my kind of things was like, if I am taking away this prop drilling, where do I place the atoms? And then if you create an atom, is it always created once and never again? Or do you have like an atoms folder? So I'm hoping we'll get to play about with that. So let's first set up our root. We're going to import all these, but we're not actually probably going to use all of them. So again, it doesn't have to be at the very root of the application. Normally you would put it in the app.js, but because we care about our state in our house, we're going to pull it in here. I think we only really need recoil root for now. So let's wrap this. Recoil root. We're still doing what we did before, so we need to create some atoms. I think for convenience sake, do we create multiple? Let's take one room in the house, convert that. Take one room in the house, convert that room to use an atom, see how that feels, and then what we need to do with it then. Do we want to have multiple atoms, so like an atom for each room, or do we want to have an atom for the lights and then an atom for the the heating of every room? So we have this atom comes out of recoil, so I feel like I can define it in the master bedroom and define it once and use it in multiple places. I feel like that. We'll quickly find out. Yes, that's right. So we import an atom, and then we can say master light state. But then we need to use recoil to get it. What does this give us? I'm curious. Right. So we do atom, and then we need a key and a default. So the key is going to be the actual thing that we're stating on. I think that having a key on it is going to be difficult because I'm pretty sure that has to be unique. That's going to cause problems in your application because you're now going to have to like keep a library of all your recoil keys because you don't want to duplicate them. And someone's it'll say it's a duplicate somewhere at build time maybe. Hopefully not at runtime, because then you're screwed really. You could probably run a code mod or something, or an ESLint rule to check that for you, but that takes away the point of this. So then we need to give it a default. If I could spell default. Default is going to be false because the lights are off by default until we turn them on. I want to see what this looks like. Not master heat, master light state. So I'm a stickler for syntactical sugar. Right. So we've done that. npm start application. And again, the ending I'm going through, they're like, what the fuck is this about? Fire away in the comments and we'll work this out as we go. So console. That's kind of interesting. We'll ignore that error message, but So the recoil state is just the key with nothing else. But it's a recoil state. Can we stores a global variable, and then let's do temp1 dot, what do we get value of? Yeah, I don't think there's much on that. So that makes me think, do we need to find all of our atoms somewhere else? So let's create a JavaScript file. No, but is that going to work? Maybe I'm going to head himself in the docs. Let's see. So what's the basic tutorial? It's like you would wrap your thing, you create them. This annoys me. Some of these tutorials have a lot of expectations on the fact that nowhere do you see them importing something, and nowhere in your code, nowhere in a real product, are you going to have everything in one file. So you do that. I think they can live outside, and you can just do call atom and then maybe export this. So I'm going to create a file called atoms. I'm going to say import from recoil, and that'll get me my IntelliSense. So if we go back to master bedroom and we grab this, we don't want our console log anymore. So I should be able to say, oh, well, Storm locked up a bit. So I can create my master light state, I can export it, then in here I should be able to import that. Import master light state, and then use it. So going back to their example, if I want to use this as and get the values out of it, I use the use recoil state hook. So I need to pull that in. So pull in the use recoil state hook, then I can say const. So this is going to be light and set light use recoil state, and it's going to be master state. So now our light, so we replace the on with what our light value is, and then our set is going to be set light to be not light, so that's flipping the Boolean value, and that technically should work. Let's see what happens. So clear console. So that's still control it and turn it off and on, but we can see here our master down below doesn't change. So we haven't been able to share the state with our application. So we need to think about how then we share state across the product. And I think then if I go to my overview component, this is where I was keeping track of everything. I can probably pull in this. And then say this. So that I'm gonna have to, the beauty, okay, because these are returned as a, it's like array destructuring. There is a term for it, I can't remember, but it means I can name these whatever I want. So I can say master room light. I'm gonna be a little bit more specific, and then it's going to be set master room light, master room state, and then I can then say, instead of master room light. Oh, important body module, reorder the top. For yes, lint. Why can't you just auto fix it for me? So I need to move these up to the top, above, because I declared a const. Oh, I can't just copy and paste this either. It needs to know where it is. Where is this in relation to atoms? Overview is under house. Yep. So off, click this on. So now it's sharing the state, but it's been defined in one location. It's kind of cool, I guess. Like, it's, yeah. And then it means I can use that anywhere. So, like, I guess if we're looking at the whole prop drilling idea and why we don't want to do them, why would we use a library like this, I no longer need to pass that down because I don't care anymore. I no longer need this prop. I no longer need this prop or this prop. I still did the heat one, but the heat one's, you know, that was a piece of shit anyway. I no longer need these props. So now I don't need to check that the prop has been passed down to every component along that tree, which is prop drilling. I just need to be concerned about importing it, using that bit of state. That means anywhere else I want to use that state, I can use that state. Again, on, off. And I guess I could wire this up as well in overview, just to show the fact that I can change this elsewhere. So if I fire an on click here, and then I can say set the master room light to be not what the master room light currently is. Is that right? No, I did it the state, not that. So now we've wired that up so I can turn it on here and I can turn it off there. And they're two parts of the different tree. If I look at components, so they're all under Recoil root, which then has a context provider. I think it's just React context under the hood. Like, it's cool. So like, there's our master bedroom, and there's our overview. So they're, you know, different levels in the tree, and we're able to manage state between them, but we're not having to worry about passing properties the whole way down the tree and the whole way back up the tree to kind of share that state. That's kind of interesting. I haven't even read through the rest of the docs, but I'm wondering, does it recommend where to store your actual, like, where to place the atoms so they're initialized in a certain place? It's kind of talking here about local storage as well, and async storage, API reference, core. Unless I'm missing something. But I guess you could place them anywhere, and then you're just importing them, and they're probably this is like a memo. This is probably like a memoized function. So if you call it multiple times, it's not gonna try and, or actually no, you can't, because the atom itself has to have a unique key. So what happens if I say back up master light state, and we now have 2? What happens? Cannot destructure property undefined of undefined is undefined. Oh, that's a useful message. Cannot destructure a property error of undefined as it is undefined. At least it's given us somewhere towards, yes, our atoms, what line? Yeah. That probably needs improved, where it'll tell you that the key is not unique. That's a bit of a pain that it won't tell you. But I guess if we save that, yeah, it works fine. So I guess if you think about some strategy to store your atoms in a way that you'll always have unique keys, so maybe if I was doing this, I would maybe structure a little bit differently. But I could say const state underscore keys and make it equal an object where the the key and value are identical. This is kind of similar to Redux action types, I think it is. So in here I would have master underscore light equals master underscore light, and then say guest underscore light. Gerst. Guest. So that means then I'm going to be saying state keys dot master light. So they're always, yeah, that's still, you could, there's nothing stopping me from just saying but, and it doesn't fail the compile time. So you're going to need to write an ESLint rule to unique these to make sure they're all the same. But I guess like having some sort of state key management is going to help you in that respect. Top off for my wine. Anyone on the stream, any questions, wonder what the hell's going on, fire away. So I think we have a little bit of time. Let's flesh this out to see what it would look like. I'm gonna create the rest of my rooms. I've 4 rooms, so this is gonna be living light and kitchen light, and let's see. And then I want to do the same here. I don't want to have them all the same name. So living light, kitchen light. So just copy and paste this multiple times until we get what we want. So it's going to be, so instead of master light, it's going to be guest light. I need to change the key, so I need to make sure about that. We're living light. That's going to be living light key. And kitchen light, and it's going to be kitchen light key. And then we want to export these out as well. I like this idea of having all your state atoms placed here, but then you're still kind of falling in this pattern of like, this is a single source of state. You could probably have, like, I have just one atoms file. You can have an atoms directory which has different folder structures for the different business logics of your application, or different business folders of your application. Then I'm more or less describing what Redux does when you compile different state objects together to make one big store. But yeah, I guess the difference with this is I can change these individually without having to care about spreading objects in to affect other objects. That's maybe the one upside that I'm ignoring here. It's one organized block of state, but it's not one big object that I have to, if I spread in at the wrong part, I could wipe out the entire state. That's one thing I hated about that's why I hated about Redux. It was always this one big huge object that anytime you made a change, you were modifying that object. That object then was triggering re-renders everywhere. That's the other thing as well, is this triggering re-renders everywhere. Surely only the component that is listening to the state for that item that changed should re-render, technically. So, right, so let's go to our house. So now we can we'll get rid of that heat, because that's going to confuse things. I don't care about the heat. We can get rid of all the state that we kept here. We get rid of all these props. So we just have an upper floor component, and we have a lower floor component, and we have an overview component. So on the upper floor, we don't need these props anymore. I think this is the kind of nice thing. We're deleting code, we're not adding code. Deleting code always has that nice little kind of added, like, yes, I'm getting rid of stuff that I obviously didn't need. So now we're just focusing on, the components are just focusing on the layout. It's not focused on managing data flows throughout the product. So we've already set up master. We're no longer taking master heat, so we don't care about that anymore. Going to the guest room. So now we need to replicate what we did in master room. So for sake, copy, paste. And that's not going to be master anymore. That's going to be guest light state. And then we'll do the same here. Far too many spaces, but it auto imported that for me, but we don't care about unused code. I'm going to just make that on, and we'll keep out a set light, and we'll just say set light to be not on, or the opposite of on, not on, not on. We don't care about these props because we don't need them anymore. Set light, yep, that's fine. So back to our house, and we'll go to the lower floor. Again, go through the same thing, remove code that we don't need anymore. So getting rid of all these unnecessary props, and getting rid of the opportunity to make mistakes maintaining these props in the future. I think that's one of the key benefits here, is like I don't have to worry about this anymore. So let's jump back to guest room, pull in our imports, and this. Like I shouldn't have to think about these. So what is this? This is living room. So living room state. I know I'm frantically typing at the minute just to kind of get everything through. So then we can change this. So now it's just going to be set light to be the opposite of what on is. Go to our lower floor, go to our kitchen, get rid of the state, or let's get rid of the props here. Jump back to living room and copy and paste. And this is going to be kitchen state. Get rid of the living room state and fix our set light. Set light to be not on, not the opposite of what on is. So we've got all that. I haven't updated the overview yet, so it might crash, but we'll see. Oh, so master worked anyway. Guest on. As we see, the other ones aren't updating because they need the state. So let's flick to overview. Now, while I'm doing this, so there's this idea of selectors that I haven't touched on. I'm wondering, can this help with us? So a selector represents a piece of derived state. You can think of derived state as output of passing state to a pure function that modifies it and gives state in a way. So we have our add-on to do filter state show all. Then we have a selector. A selector has a key and has a get method. So we can get other state So to do filtered list state, so it's getting the filter, it's getting the list, and based on the filter, it's going to do certain things. Get filter state. And then how do we use that? Use recoil value, pass it the filter state. So we have that. It's probably overkill to do it this way, but we have the last option, which is like the overview of all the lights in the house. So I guess we could say like, right, there's 3 states: none, some, all. So let's see if we can add in a selector. Again, I'm probably going to want to group my selectors into a selector file. Not that there's no standards, but so selector, that should be selectors. Selectors plural. So selectors, and we're going to have to say import selector. Trying to type too quick. Selector from Recoil. And then let's copy past this. So this is going to be not filter. Let's see. House overview. Do we add selector? House overview state. So we call selector, give it the key, the match, and then this is where the gets are going to get gotten. I don't know. So I want to say import, and it's going to be pulling them all in. So I'll say from /Atom. I'm on the same level. So yeah, /atoms. And I'll just go to that file and copy and paste because I want to get all of them and assert on them. Yeah. So based on their example, you can call get, and that must get the value of the state object. So I want to call get on each of those. So const master equals get master state, and then we'll do this multiple times and fill them out. 1, 2, 3. So it's going to be guest living kitchen, and then this is going to be guest living and kitchen. So then I want to say, so we just return it with the value it's going to be. So I have to say if I want to do like array.all. So values equals. It's way out of scope of what I was thinking about, but at least I'm using a selector. We'll think about that, sure. And what there, I did it wrong. It's inside here. So we have our values as an array. So then I think there is an array.all. Array.every. I think Lodash used to be all. So I think I can just say if values dot every and boolean. So every is true. Is that going to work? Quick test. So create an array dot every boolean true. What if I make them out of one false? False. Okay, yeah, so we call it. So if they're all true, we then return all on if values dot, I think it's sum. What does our sum do? Make them all false. Yep, okay, so we want sum. Return sum on, and if values dot if values dot every not boolean, then return, I can type return. It's going to be none on, and then make sure the not every, so all true. Shit, can't do a not, or is it not? Ah, bollocks. Can't do fancy tricks, but I can just say val not val. I think that works. Every val not val. So they're all true. They're all true. Val. So that's fine if I make these all false. Yeah, okay, that works, but it's not as fancy. So we've got our house overview state. We can then export our house overview state. So how do we use that? So selectors. So we've created our selector, which I think everything's going smooth. Yep. So we created our selector. We then need to use our selector. So we have this hook called use recoil value, and then we pass it our selector, and then that should give us whatever the value is based on those states changing, which is kind of cool because the state's changing as it's changing. Yeah. So let's go to our overview, and we're going to get rid of these because I only care about the overview. So we can get rid of that list. I styled that list, didn't I? Yeah, that's fine. So we're going to get rid of this, and we're just going to make a paragraph. We're going to say house overview. Overview is the one word, isn't it? Yeah, I think so. And then we need to pull in. So now we don't need these props anymore because we didn't need them. We don't need them to pass down to be able to tell us what's going on. Whereas we can use our selector to tell us what's going on. It's funny. I was watching a stream by Kitza, and he had mentioned about this is just MobX with MobX selectors, which came out a long time ago. But I'll leave that up to other people to argue. I know nothing about MobX. It's actually on the list to do. I might do it next, but I don't want to turn this into a React state management live stream. I want to try out other different bits of tech, but we'll see how it goes. So, ready, const house overview. I keep on doing overview with a capital V, but I think it's okay. Equals use recoil value. I should auto import. And then we need to pull in house overview state from our selectors. This is all auto important as well. So now I can say house overview. This could work. Could be too easy. It might work. So none on. The English in this is terrible, but it's a dyslexic developer, so fuck it. Some on. Someone still. All on. Okay. And so, like, this component has no knowledge of all those different state values. It just knows about the selector, which compiles that state and tells it something. A good example for this would be like you have an e-commerce shop and you have like a little basket notification that shows how much they've, the total amount of money that they've, built up in their basket so far. For you to be able to do that, that component would need to know what's currently in their basket, all the products that are there, what the current value of those products are. Whereas you could write a selector which would do all that for you. So then that component, when you're testing it, all it needs to do is take in a value and display it. It doesn't care about calculating the total. You have external logic, external testable logic that can tell you, based on these values, this is what the total should be. Whereas this component doesn't give a fuck about that. It just says, based on a string that comes out of this, I display it. I don't care what it is. It could be gibberish for all I care. But this component is where your logic is and where you would test it. I would maybe even move some of this into like a utility function or break it down into more testable code. But I think there's a definite advantage there using selectors. Yes, fuck it, if they're being done in MobX state or whatever, then who gives a shit. But I like that idea where, I can write this logic once and not have to replicate it or create like an arbitrary component that's shareable that does this logic. It's interesting. Okay, so we got a message in the chat. I know a little bit about MobX with thread and creator. MobX with the difference between the two. Oh, Twitter thread. I shouldn't click random links in the chat either, but sure. Yeah, this is definitely worth a read later. I'm gonna bookmark that. But I find it interesting. It's a new approach to me because I haven't dealt with as many state management libraries as others might have had. Let's flick back to the cam. I'm going to be closing up the stream soon here, so if you have any questions or anything you want to chat about, fire away into the chat, and I'll hopefully take a look at them. But I find it interesting. I find it's obviously brand new. There's not a lot of documentation, best practices, way to do things at the minute. There probably is some ways that they're following internally, but they're just not sharing them, because when you set a standard and then you try and change it later, you're just going to get shit all over because people say, oh, well, you're doing it wrong. You did it wrong this way. Now this is wrong that way. Like where to organize, where to manage and maintain your atoms and your selectors and all the different parts of your state management. I think that's very interesting. I generally think like it's something to watch. I'm not going to try it out soon, but compared to just raw state and creating a provider and context, sometimes that can be really cumbersome, and there's still boilerplate involved with that. Simple state provider tries to take a little bit of that away, but at the same time, there's still boilerplate. No matter what you're getting away. This felt very light on the boilerplate. I dropped in that context at the root, and then I didn't have to think about it again. And I found that very interesting. I'd be curious to see how this evolves and grows. I know there's plans to improve the selectors, and there's like talk about having family selectors. Yeah, I think it's very good. Yeah, kind of on that chat in the comments. Well, yeah, I think there's a lot of room to grow this as a technology stack. And then again, well, the lack of boilerplate is great because you're not led down a path of how to do something, but at the same time, it was a problem that I kind of found with React after using it for like a year or so. There wasn't a lot of standards and boilerplate that you had to do the same way if you were doing something with Angular, you had to create like a service in a factory, and you had all these different connectors and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, why the fuck are you doing this? I just want to store a fucking, a user's name and be able to change it in an input. But at the same time, cut the React, and it's like, how do I do this thing? And then the reply is, well, here's 10 different frameworks that do that for you. It's up to you to figure that out and you to choose that path. And if you're an inexperienced developer, having a rigid framework and a rigid kind of boilerplate of like, no, this is how you should be doing something, someone holding your hand through that can be really useful. For an experienced developer who doesn't want constraints and wants to be flexible and do their own thing, it's a dream. For likes of me, like I wanna do things in the most random as fucked up ways, and like in my current work application, we manage state in 5 different patterns, and we deal with a lot of other stuff in different patterns. But for me, that's really cool because I can try out different shit all the time. For the junior developer who started in the team 2 days ago or whatever, they're kind of like, well, it's done this way here, it's done that way there. What way do I do it? And it's like, I try and say like, well, whatever one has the oldest commit message, the last time it was edited, don't do it that way. Do it the one that's brand new, because chances are it's better, or it's the new crusade that we're going down. Like we went from Alt.js, we went from pure React to Alt.js to a little bit of Redux, which kind of failed and we gave up on it. Then we moved to hooks, context, simple state provider because I created it, and we're debating like how we manage and maintain hooks. Do we do all use state, use reducer? Do we aggregate into custom hooks more often? Do we manage in context but also have custom hooks? And because there is rough guidelines from the React team, and the React community kind of has their own patterns, it can be sometimes a little bit misleading, like which path to go down. But I'm interested to see where it goes, and I think like having that flexibility allows me to say like, if I don't like a pattern, I don't have to do it. I can write my own pattern. If I was working on something like Angular, I think I would be really really annoyed by having slowed down by not just for the type system. I love the idea of TypeScript, but I just don't want to write TypeScript. But having this set pattern, like I have to do this, I have to do that, would really stump my growth and slow down my development cycle, because I'm always having to think about, how do I create that factory and that service and that controller and all these different hierarchical things that I'm sure they're there for a valid reason, for when you grow and scale, you can maintain them. But with React, it always feels like, let's just get the shit together and get it out the door. We'll worry about scalability later. That's not a great approach, but it works for me. And eventually, we'll find some new library, or the application will fall over at some point, and we'll do micro front ends with Svelte and stuff like that. But I think for now we're maintaining well enough.